I just hopped off a call with my friend Val where we were discussing the Time 100 creators list and how, let's just say, pathetic that list was. So in response, we figured, why not try and create a list that encapsulates the top 100 European creators in the world? Because there are a few problems with that first time list. For one, is the focus on North American creators. They tried to advertise like they had like American creators from 15 different countries. It was kind of a bit of bullshitting. Then they tried to explain what they deemed as a creator worthy to be on that list. They really said nothing in that description whatsoever of any sort of meaning. And then you look through the list itself, and you have people who deliver real value, and then you have people who are known for nothing more than becoming a meme and being part of a crypto rug pull. And let's just say none of us thought those sorts of people were worthy to be on the list when there were so many who deserved taking that place. Just for one, the bloody Sidemen sold out 90,000 seats at Wembley in a matter of minutes. And yet, not even remotely on the list. Tell me one American who's done more than that. Okay, maybe Mr. Beast. He hasn't sold out Wembley. No, fuck that. Like, it's not even close. But we touched on a number of subjects that I thought were important to discuss, and that I figured I'd run through here because it is a really interesting discussion point, whether it's about what deems impact for a creator, what even defines a creator in the first place, and what defines a European creator. Is it someone who's born? Like, does Dr. Mike count as a European creator? He lived in Russia for like 4 years before moving to the United States. Does Hassan Piker count? He was born, maybe he was born in the US, I don't know. But he did primary school, high school in Turkey, and then moved to the United States for college. I'd say if they can play on the Olympic team, they're ours. We're taking them. So, we've done what a European creator is. But how do you define what impact is? Because there's so many different avenues that could take, right? Forbes will take is how much money did they make? And I think any sort of forethought would realize how limited that perspective is. Refreshments. As well, they tried to talk about different levels of engagement that they measured. That didn't really make sense as well. And like, sure, some may get views, but it has absolutely no relative assessment on the impact that they let into their audience. Right? Like, I will see constantly, or you saw throughout TikTok's heyday, people with tens of millions of followers trying to host a sort of meet and greet, and no one will show up because no one cared. You showed up on their feed, they made no conscious decision to follow you, you're just kind of entertaining for that slot machine 5 seconds. Versus I have friends now with merely hundreds or just a couple of thousand followers, and they're hosting massive meetings of hundreds of people across continents. Because it's not about how many people, it's about the depth, and the impact that you give to others means they're more willing to participate with you, whether it be you're trying to sell a product or service or something like that, whether it be you're just trying to host an event and rally these people together. Or maybe you're launching a fundraiser like Yes Theory for Reg, because they put something out, a couple hours later, like £30,000. Next day, £120,000. A couple days after that, £200,000. You're not just going to get that off any community, you're only going to get that off a community like Yes Theory, where they have built so much depth over such a period of time. So measuring what you define as impact is so important to be able to come up with a final answer of who is the most impactful European creator. Let's play by Eurovision rules here. Australia counts, and we'll tag along New Zealand because I feel bad for them. Pathetic. You're not good enough for us. No, just kidding. We're taking the Pavlova though. That's ours. And Russell Crowe, he's also ours. Righto. What are one of the other questions? The language. They acknowledged within the Times list, which I credit, but there's a limitation on the English language, because fundamentally trying to get Americans to wonder what other creators are out there, that's going to be a tough one. And even in Europe, right, sure, you could talk about English-speaking creators, but then you pretty much cut off the entire continent, because every single country has a different dominant language. And you may think, wow, you need to speak in English to do well in your career. Not true at all. If you ignore the fact of, Spanish or Hindu or or Mandarin. Of course I missed Mandarin. The point being, even places like Germany or France, if you do well in those countries, you can do extremely well because they still have such a population. I guess what Australian celebs are successful. Sure, maybe not as successful as American ones. But they still do very well for themselves. And think about Germany or France, there's a far bigger population than we do. Me being based in England, it's funny when people say this country is getting full. It's bloody empty. It looks like no one's here half the time. But fundamentally, that language barrier is going to inherently limit the people that we can choose on because we just don't even know they exist. And that call, people are bringing up people from like Italy and Greece and all these other places, and there's no chance I would have ever heard of them, even though they have 60 million subscribers on YouTube. Fundamentally, that's always going to be a limiting factor. But also assuming that English speakers are the top is also naive, considering only 19% of the world's population actually speaks English. So most people simply don't. And you saw Mr. Beast understand that when he started trying to dub his videos to other languages, because you're just missing out on 80% of the world. So as soon as you start translating it or producing videos in which you don't need to understand a language because the only language that's being spoken is visual, then you automatically reach a much larger percentage of the planet. It might be harder to get depth because you're not hearing a real person, and once again, you're not hearing any words spoken to you, but if your goal is just to get reach and exposure, that's really the way to do it. Another point, which we didn't get a chance to discuss on, but I thought was still relevant, is that what defines a creator? Cool, if someone's just producing a podcast in their room or producing a video, doing everything themselves, 100% a creator. But is Giannis Antetokounmpo a creator? Or is any athlete that happens to have a YouTube channel? Or Ronaldo? Or what about people who were creators? You're talking like a Rhett and Link. But now they've moved into more of like a VC, large media production studio. Are they still creators? Or are they just presenters on a production team? I've heard the Sidemen argue that before, where they are no longer, some of them are still engaged in YouTube behaviors. KSI just started pushing out his YouTube again, putting out normal style videos. But in a lot of cases, they're just presenters on a large media team that happens to upload to YouTube. Are you a creator if you do that? Or are you a presenter? Like if you're an editor on the Sidemen, you're not a creator. You're an editor for a YouTube channel. Is a creator someone who, is it a new media entrepreneur, someone who has to engage in a number of the different practices to push things forward? But once you start hyper-focusing and prioritizing one specific area, you're no longer a creator, you're that skill set. You're a photographer, you're a videographer, you're a director, where a creator is someone who kind of has to do it all independently in hopes of building it up to something, either still maintaining it themselves like Ryan Trahan, or engaging in a larger media operation. So I think that's also an important factor to consider there. If you're talking impact again, reach, revenue, societal impact, I think we kind of covered that. Is virality the same as value? Probably not. There's a lot of people who get a lot of views, but are they delivering value? Potentially not. Like Mr. Beast's, oh, hey, I'm running with his shorts that he produces. Once again, as we discussed about getting as much exposure as possible, I wouldn't consider that impactful. That's just purely exposure. But exposure allows him to do things that are impactful, like trying to get rid of child labor with his feastables, or trying to encourage generosity in things with Team Trees and Team Cs. That exposure, that virality, that attention allows you to direct that attention to meaningful, impactful things. And I think that's where the real value lies, in the things that he is currently engaging in. Mm-hmm. Also, I just want to have a particular note for Forbes focusing on money. I know that's their whole deal, but like, fuck capitalism, man. Like, it's designed to work against us, and I think more and more people are starting to realize that. It's fun to see people like Gary Stevenson rise up, who are changing the narrative about what it means to live in an economy that doesn't actually work for you and only works for a specific subgroup of people who already have established wealth. When I was at the Creator Leaders event a few months ago, I can't show you it because it's holding up my computer right now. They were saying, we got Gary's trading book. And I'm like, what? Gary Stevenson's going to be at this like Creator Leaders event? Like, that's sick. No, it turns out it was a Gary V book on day trading attention, which is a bit different to Gary Stevenson's trading game, which I still got to read. But it's fascinating to see his rise. And is he a creator? I probably wouldn't call him a creator because, once again, he's an economist, he's a trader, and he's a speaker. But I wouldn't call him a creator because he's not actually doing the part of creator, unless he's doing lots behind the scenes that I don't know about. He's just doing the speaking, and he's a team behind the scenes that is doing the pushing. So I wouldn't necessarily call him a creator. I'd call him, potentially you could still categorize him as a YouTuber and things like that. Even then, his predominant craft isn't YouTube, it's just general speaking and getting out a message. So no, you'd probably say economist, speaker, trader. Mm-hmm. Really trying to narrow down here what counts as trading, actually, but I should still put him on the list, considering we've got other iffy ones. Let's put him here, Gary Stevenson. Because if you're talking about changing the perception of, Western economics, that's pretty impactful. So I'll put him on the list nonetheless. Lovely. Who else we got? Off-platform versus on-platform influence. I think something that would really push you up the list is the ability to create off-platform influence, whether it be Ryan Trahan doing his 50 states in 50 days series and raising, surely it's going to hit $10 million by the end of this. This is absolutely crazy, the rate. It's been going up $500,000 a day for the past few days, which is just incomprehensible. Or whether it be, once again, Yes Theory, hosting events and just people coming at a last minute's notice. Whether it be so many different sidemen selling out Wembley. Or you can even talk about things like Simon Squibb encouraging people to pursue their dreams, like things that create off-platform impact, or more than just, once again, virality. I think that's really where you have to focus on, because that's genuinely what matters. Not just views, not just money, but actual positive impact. It's like, cool, Jake Paul gets views, but I wouldn't say he necessarily has the most positive impact off-platform of creators. So sure, he might be on the Forbes list, he might be on virality lists. Maybe not anymore because he doesn't really do social media anymore, but I wouldn't necessarily call it like positive impact that we want to idolize. Most of the time. I think there's the odd thing he does. That's somewhat decent, but yeah. Holistically, I think there are better people to look up to. You know, Nerdfighteria, Hank and Green, you're talking about smaller audiences that do a lot of impact. Like, they may only get a couple 100,000 views per video, which is a lot for people like us. But for them, it's much more minimal in terms of, like, you know, there are people, the status that they have within the industry is far higher than the views that they receive. The fact that they founded VidCon, the fact that they're, you know, building child, like the hospitals, maternity hospitals in like Sierra Leone, and he's raising millions through their community. The fact that when they say something, it creates ripples, whether they have a perspective on one of the platforms, that those platforms start to react as a result. This is impact. This is a voice that matters. This is a voice that people listen to. It may not have as widespread attention because it's much more niche in the things that they discuss, unless you're talking about Crash Course and other things that they run. But in terms of their sort of behind-the-scenes impact, power, and influence, absolutely they're up that list, not on the European perspective. But the point being, you can still have massive influence without having that massive audience. You also have like a thing of like people who are a bit of sleepers, like I think even Trahan kind of falls into this list where they really have a huge impact. They have lots of people watching them, but they're not necessarily like commonly discussed. You're not wearing a Trahan t-shirt down the street, or like, you know, I'm wearing a Sidemen jersey right now. Like, they're kind of just in the background doing phenomenal things, but they don't bring an oversized attention to themselves. They're not building themselves onto a pedestal that doesn't exist. And I think there's real pride in that it's good to kind of do your thing without just trying to get attention for attention's sake. Probably also because you don't want unnecessary attention. You don't want random people recognizing you in the street unless they actually care about what you care about. Like, you don't want people like, oh my God, you're famous. You know, you want people to be like, oh, it's cool you did this thing. I'm doing this thing too. Oh, amazing. Tell me more about that thing. Like, they're the sort of conversations that you want to have with people. And that's what I noticed down in a creator camp in Austin, Texas, Film Fest, where, yeah, you have people just out of high school. And you have people who are working with A24 to direct a film. But everyone's just as passionate about art as everyone else. Everyone's just as nerdy. Like, tell me more about this thing that you're working on. There's no status. There's no, I'm better than you. There's no, like, I'm bored because I feel like I'm just teaching and mentoring everyone. Everyone has an impact on each other because everyone brings a different perspective, a different passion. And that is so much value in creating communities like that. It's really hard to do, but if you do it well, it was the best weekend of my life, hands down. I will be releasing videos about that if I haven't already. But listen to the video I did with Danny. I mean, he talks all about it, how to cultivate communities, how to host events exactly like this. He's now left Creator Camp to pursue playlist storytellers, which he's been hosting around North America, which is just so incredible to see what just talented people like that are able to do. And you're so excited to see the next couple of years build up and the value that they're able to provide to their specific niche community, because it beats all of this nonsense shit that we're seeing for a long time about, once again, attention, money, fame. Who cares? I think as well, one of the things we discussed is difference between Americans and Europeans is what is valued here. In a lot of American culture, once again, this isn't universal, there's lots of overlap, it's a Venn diagram, but there is this sort of capitalistic culture of how much money can we make, how successful can we be, how many views that we can get, where the typical cliche European perspective is like work-life balance, right? You finish at 5, you go home, you know, you spend time with the wife and kids, you have a coffee with your friend. Like, it's much more a lifestyle sort of goal. once again, not universal. There's much more overlap nowadays than there used to be, but it's much more live a good lifestyle as opposed to create burnout and burn yourself into the ground. So I think determining what deems value completely changes the way that creators operate, the way that creators behave, whether you're thinking about Sidemen not trying to make money on Wembley, but trying to raise money for charity, or trying to create a positive experience for the fans versus just starting a Team 10 because you think, or Hype House, because you think that will bring you money and success, which are very, very different perspectives. And is half the reason that creators like Sidemen have lasted so long, because they started off as friends. That was the foundation of their relationship. They were friends that happened to create content together. They didn't come together because they thought it would be a business venture like Hype House. They came together because they were simply wanted people to play video games with, and that expanded into a business operation, but it had the foundation of friendship. And you're seeing more and more of that now. I think within the streaming space, there's lots of those like friend circles that work together to do things. And I think that's why those have lasted, because they've learned from that you need to start as friends, not just like a phase kind of crashing down because a lot of terrible business decisions going on behind the scenes, which leads to bad results as always. And I think one of the problems as well, which has hindered Austro-Europeans' ability to really succeed, which is what I'm trying to do here myself, is that you have a lot of people on the runway ready to take off. Like, this is basically like Top Gun, right? That new Top Gun where you have Tom Cruise, you have Miles Turner sitting on this really fucking short runway, having to take off because the world is crashing around them. And it's bloody near impossible. You have people already in the sky, already doing well, like the Sidemans, like some people in Australia. And then you have people on the runway so desperate to just take off. But this runway is too short to do that. Unless you're a miracle, this runway is too short. So trying to create opportunities for people to build out, trying to create opportunities for people to take off and achieve what they desire to achieve, live the life that they want to live, and be able to deliver value to the people and the communities around them, I think is so important. And I'm starting to see more and more people focus on that, which is really, really, really cool to see. Like when I was trying to build up stuff in Sydney with a friend, Sydney creatives, we'd do like photo walks and things where people would come along, would chat, you'd make friends. I'm just shooting around the city. It was great. But COVID kind of wiped that out and a couple other things, and it just kind of went dead. Where now I'm starting to see more and more people that I've met, people that I know from uni, that they're building out these communities now. They're saying, fuck it, no one's doing it for us. I'm going to do it myself. And it's really cool and powerful to see, and they're able to, with 100 followers on Instagram, rally a group of people at a location because people are just so desperate for these events to occur, so desperate to meet other people who are just as passionate as they are. It's why Creator Camp was able to get people to fly in 30 hours away, whether it be from the Gold Coast or from Cape Town or from London, or even drive 30 hours, fly 20 hours to an event like that, because people are so desperate for community. I've had some friends try and push me to focus my magazine more on a B2B level, where it's like, what problem do people have? What solution are you providing to them? And hence, they're going to pay you for that solution. But I don't think that works here. Yes, that's usually the way you go about business, because that just makes sense. Cool, you need photos? I can give you photos. That's how I've been operating. But I think there is a different sort of value that you can bring if the problem you're solving is loneliness or lack of feeling like you're in a community. Can I say, hey, I hear you, I see your community, here's your community being uplifted, and here's other things that are happening in your neighborhood that you can take part in, that you can feel a part of. And I think me focusing the magazine and things on that brings so much more value than just trying to be like B2B. I can help you get more leads. Like, there's value in that. There's lots of great people doing that. But I never feel like my heart is in those sorts of avenues, unless it's more of a small scale thing. Like I love mentoring friends who are getting into content, or once again, even photography is solving that problem. But by and large, for the magazine, I don't think that's the way to go. I think it has to be more in that community, more in that accepting and hearing your voice heard, and that perspective, I think, will bring so much more value and have so many more people a part of the journey than anything else. Because a B2B, you don't give a shit. You ditch your photographer tomorrow. But if they feel like that they have been part of your human experience, your development, so much more value in that, so much more long-lasting, so much more commitment, attachment. And it's what Yes Theory was really focused on, has allowed them to create so much connection, not only between them and their audience, but between their audience and their audience. Because you rally these people who all have the same life mission, who all share the same values about wanting to do things to improve their life, that, a better life exists on the other side of your comfort zone. Oh, I kind of miss this, but why Europeans, Australians are undervalued. One, yes, the runway makes it really hard to go up in terms of opportunities and events and meeting other people, but also the financial runway. There's just simply less money in these countries. I would talk to creators in the UK, even though they have the same US audience as their US counterparts, they will earn significantly less money on brand deals than their Americans, because there's less brands putting money into the space. They might undervalue British people because, like, oh, you're British, there's less of you, less customers to advertise to, whatever it may be. Just like, to agree, that's kind of true. But also, it just means it hinders one's ability to expand. People I know in the UK who are kind of living paycheck by paycheck would be thriving in the US off the same level of audience, but there is just simply less money. I know Australians are valued one of the highest in terms of CPMs, but there's only 25 million people, where Americans are sort of 370 odd million people, maybe more now. Keeps increasing every time I check, obviously. It's how population growth works. You get my point. That there needs to be the physical runway of people to get opportunities, meet people, get confidence, see someone who's done it before to be able to pursue this arena. And then there also needs to be financial runways to be able to make it a full-time living and not have to do a 9 to 5 for such a long period of time that you end up stop doing content because you're like, what's the point? I burn out. This is too much. Also, I've heard the Sidemen mention before things like joke references. Like the Sidemen, it's a bunch of friends hanging out, so there's going to be lots of jokes, British references and things, and that just limits the potential outside audience. I think they have a lot of Australian audience because there's lots that we can relate on, but I think, having something hyper niche, like if you're doing like LA urban infrastructure, well, it's going to be hard to get people from France listening in on that. So I think that also making it hyper personalized, if you have really personality driven content, that becomes more localized because it's much more based on your experience, your lived experience, and the lived experiences of those around you, which changes your ability to expand. And hence why a lot of them go on tour, right? Comedians go on tour, musicians go on tour. The Sidemen film some videos in the United States. Max Klemenko is always flying around to the world to film videos in different places, because that's how you can gather those audiences, expand your impact, and make things locally relevant, right? Like comedians will make jokes per country that they're in. If an American tried to make American jokes in Turkey, it wouldn't quite make as much sense as if they were trying to make like Middle Eastern jokes in Turkey. Like you have to localize the things that you're doing to be able to really build connections with those people. I mean, it's hard to beat like an Andrew Schultz or a Gianmarco Ceresi with that sort of localizing. Or even I saw, why am I forgetting? Russell Howard as well. Same thing, he localizes jokes because, if you want to get really, really dig deep into the audience that you're performing to, you have to come with jokes or entertainment or education or whatever it may be that actually relates to the people that you are talking to. There is also another element that we can talk about of originality and responsibility. Originality can be some creators on that Time 100 list. All they do is just see what other people are doing, copy-paste the thumbnail, copy-paste the exact video, and put it out there. And you're not bringing anything to society by doing that. Like, you're just creating more mess that has to be shifted through. It's just, yeah, they do well. They get views, they make money. But there's no value in that. There's no... sure, inspiration is a good thing because you can meld things together, but just copy-pasting that a lot of these creators on the Time 100 list do, there's nothing more I have to say. It's just a waste of space, effectively. And then in terms of responsibility, I know Hassan Piker went off at Nelk Boys recently. Nelk Boys are YouTubers. They've had some high-profile guests, let's say, whether it be the President of the United States or most recently war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu. And they kind of, like, the fact that they had to do a bit of damage control shows just how much a lack of responsibility they have. In that they were saying, oh yeah, we didn't really know much about this issue, so we just kind of went in there. And you're like, I'm sorry, what? You're speaking to a war criminal registered by every single international body on the planet. And your excuse is, oh, we didn't know much about this issue, but we figured we'd just ask him some questions. And they were even saying, they gave us some pre-prepared questions to ask him. We tried to ask ones off that. Like, I'm sorry, you're being used as a propaganda puff piece to reach a very specific audience within the United States. And your response is, yeah, let's do it for him. It's like, what, if Rommel, on behalf of Hitler, came for you and said, yeah, would you, do an interview for us where you have to ask us pre-prepared questions? You don't know anything about the Holocaust, so we'll just continue spewing our propaganda with no pushback. No, you'd say, fuck off, mate. Like, what do you want about? But this is what they are. There's no sense of responsibility. And just being used, once again, as a propaganda mouthpiece for a genocidal, apartheid ethno-state. Which, no wonder Hassan Piker went off at them, because it's just disgraceful. If you're not qualified to push back, like, you kind of go into the sense of Chomsky, which is a bit of a side tangent from creators, but is 100% relevant into information distribution in any age. You may not think you're biased, right? You may be a news anchor and news reporter for some organization. You may not think you're biased. You may think no one's telling you what to say. But simply, you would not have been hired. You would not have been chosen as a podcast for Netanyahu to go on if your views did not already reflect that of the individual, the organization, the person that is being interviewed. And that is a problem if you're aggressive, if you push back, if you say, no, you're wrong. Guess what? You're not going to be invited to these press events. That's why the AP was banned from the White House, because they refused to say Gulf of America, which is like disgusting, and hence why I think the courts actually, they sued their way back into the White House. Because you can't have a situation where if you only get let in if you say nice things, because then every organization just becomes puff piece propaganda rather than actually providing independent value with critical takes, right? Imagine, like, the only way I could use YouTube if I was like, YouTube's amazing, it does everything perfectly, rather than saying, yeah, occasionally it does fuck up, right? Occasionally it does fuck over creators. It's much better than most of the other platforms, but if I had to be nice every time you had to speak about something just to use their platform or service, we'd be living in an autocratic state. We'd be living in North Korea, and we don't want to be doing that, do we? So, creators just need more responsibility, and I think we saw a bit of that with, if you're talking early days, Logan Paul was probably one of the first cases of that, where you're kind of in a situation where you're making $50 million a year. Every video you put out gets like 15, 20 million views. You're making so much money. Everything's telling you you're great. You're getting all of this attention, all of these opportunities. So your whole thing is about how can we do it bigger, better tomorrow? And because you're doing it a daily vlog, and it's tough. It's really tough. You have no opportunity to step back and think, are we on the right path? Are we making the right decisions? Are we doing the right things here? So I genuinely feel for him. I don't blame him for the decisions he made, because I understand the situation that he was in at the time. I'm not talking about some recent scandals, but I'm talking about that era. It was wrong, obviously, but I understand the context in which it arose from, where you're being told you're amazing, you're being told you're great, the numbers are going up, the views are going up, you're making more money, you're getting all these opportunities. How can you do bigger and better tomorrow? And you have no ability to reflect, no time to think, are we going the right way? So of course, at some point, something is going to occur where you run off the cliff because you never looked up to see if there was a cliff coming. Same thing happened with David Dobrik. Well, I think most of the news headlines about David Dobrik, there's just half the things, like perspectives about David Dobrik, just like fundamentally wrong. Like there's so much misinformation about what the actual problem is. And when you get caught up in these false headlines that get put out there, you miss what the actual fundamental underlying issue is. And the underlying issue with Dobrik during his sort of collapse was that same sort of thing. He's doing it on such a consistent basis. It's like, how can I do bigger, better tomorrow? That you once again have no ability to look up and say, well, what are we doing here? And also because he got successful so young, there was no having gone through the industry, seeing how productions work and operations and how you balance certain boundaries and giving people the ability to say, no, I don't want to be a part of this, etc. He just thinks he's a kid having fun, hanging out with friends. But from other people's perspective, they can feel pressured into doing certain things because it's David Dobrik. Like, wow, this amazing person, maybe it's an amazing opportunity, like, whatever it may be, you feel pressured into it, even though from his perspective, he's just a kid having fun. And because he didn't rise up through those traditional ranks, and because he got successful so early, there's no opportunity for him to reflect on that, to understand that, to really take to heart that that is the reality that he is now living in. That he can't just do whatever. You are now, sure, a very lean operation, but you're a professional media operation that has to operate with different bounds, different ethics than, someone running around with a camera. It was the same thing with Mr. Beast when some things came out. And I was like, half these things are meaningless. Like, yeah, okay, his friends had to learn to stop making dick jokes on camera. But it's like, you can do that when it's a bunch of friends fucking around in the beginning because you're just having fun. But it's also understanding that, it's a entrepreneurial environment where what you could make jokes about, what you could say when it's just a few friends mucking around, you can't do anymore when you're a full-fledged media operation. It completely changes the dynamics that are involved in the way that you have to behave with employees. What you can do to a friend, what you can say to a friend, you cannot say to your hired, employee. Very different boundaries there. So it's something that they had to adapt, something that they had to change as they expanded, and it's like 100%. makes sense. That's just the reality of the situation of any startup going to a business. And I think another thing that we did discuss in that 100 creators is time. Like, there's a difference, which I've also been thinking about as well with the magazine, is, are you documenting culture or are you creating culture? In that it feels like time is trying to catch up to these people and trying to tie themselves to them. It's like, look how cool we are. We're associated with these individuals, these top creators, rather than being like, we are going to start defining what top means, which I think is far more important. And a lot of these magazines started out that way, like Forbes, like fucking even like Vogue, or they defined what beauty was, what certain values people should have, Esquire, or what it was for like university students. Or this is where they actually made an impact on their community. They defined culture. What is the image of a certain type of person? Or what should a certain person aspire to being, aspire to wear? Where all of a sudden, if it feels like you're playing catch up with a shitty list, you're like, hey, look, we're cool. Like, we're banking off a name that's kind of existed for a while, but really we provide no value anymore. It's just pathetic, and you can see that they're really on the way down. And I think the two final things that I want to discuss here is, for one of the people discussing with, she used the word courage. Courage is a metric for impact. And I think there's such value in that. Are you doing things that push the boundaries? Are you paving new paths for people to follow? Whether that be a yes theory, taking the risk, quitting uni, pursuing something that was so crazy, had no indication that it was going to work, but they just had a feeling that it would. Or it be Ryan Trahan going across the country trying to raise an absurd amount for charity. Whether it be Mr. Beast and Mark Rober doing the Team Trees and Team C's. Whether it be, like, there's so many examples of people just doing the crazy, doing the impossible, or the pioneers, John and Hank Green starting VidCon, or countless examples I could go on about. Do you have the courage to pave that new path? And if you do, you should 100% be in consideration for that list, because there's so much more valuable than following right behind. Like, Kobe was a good basketball player, but he will never be the best, because he was always just following in Michael Jordan's footsteps. He was always like, how can I be like Michael Jordan? But what made him so impactful was the impact that he left on the players around him. People didn't love him because he was a good basketball player. People loved him because he brought hope, because he brought motivation, because he brought aspiration to the people around him, whether it be random kids playing in the streets or whether it be other professional athletes in other areas. That's the value that he brought, not his skills on the court, but in those other areas. So as long as you just try and follow in the path of someone else, you're only going to be the second best version of them. Or if you actually try and branch out and find other areas that you deliver value, that's where I think success really lies, and where you deserve to be on a list like that. And I think the final thing about what do we stand for, Val brought that up right at the end. And I think that's really, really important, is what values do we want to convey? What values do we want to put out there? As I mentioned with like Hank and John Green, Ryan Trahan, Beast and Mark Rober, the value is generosity, raising up your local community, donating to a good cause. These are sort of values that we want to perpetuate. Not the ones about how much money can we make, not the ones about how much wealth can we hoard, not the ones about, how can we win at other people's expense? But instead, how can we uplift our community to do better? How can we lift up our community to make sure that we all succeed together? Much more of an Asian perspective on society. Certain parts, it's always different everywhere. But there is that much more of that community focus in certain regions in Middle East and Asia, where it's not how can I do as well as I can, but how can I uplift my family with me? And I think the West can learn a lot from that, where it's not just how can I get my white picket house living with just me and my partner, but how can we bring everyone along for the ride with us? And I think understanding what sort of values we want to put out there, what sort of values we want to project into the world and inspire amongst the younger generation. Not conspiracy theories, Joe Rogan, not war propagandists, Nelk Boys, but instead really putting out into the world what we want to see within it. And I think focusing on that, having the courage to pave new paths, and really figuring out what matters and how you want to positively impact the next generation or the people around you is what matters and what defines success and what will put you fundamentally on that list. But this is me rambling for a while. How long have we been going? 40 minutes. Just as a little secret to end this with, I kind of run this as a test of like, could I handle a solo monologue? Could I ramble for enough period of time? Because at Camp Film Fest, I know I talk about this a lot because it was the best week of my life. But there was a guy on stage who had phenomenal stage presence, absolutely great at getting the audience involved, getting people excited, moving things along, phenomenal MC. And I asked him, I chatted to him afterwards, and I'm like, how did you do that? What's your experience? Like, you done stand-up? Like, what's going on? He's like, nothing, never. It was his first time ever doing stage work. But he had done speaking. He had a podcast where he would ramble for like 20 minutes non-stop. And that ability to communicate with the camera. See, the problem here, right, is if there's people in front of me, it's very easy to communicate and interact because you can see people's facial expressions. You can say they're having a good time, they're not having a good time, and weave the conversation to kind of boost energy levels or whatever reaction you're trying to convey. But once you're on stage, it's black. You can't see faces. You're speaking to emptiness, and the ability to speak to a camera over and over again and be able to communicate and banter and make yourself laugh allows you to do that same stage thing. While it seems completely different, speaking in your own room behind a camera is the exact same thing as speaking on stage, assuming you've, the same sort of resonant communication types. Mine here wasn't really like a humorous banter as much as it was just a straight up communication rant to the camera. But being able to do that skill translates so well. So I wanted to see, could I do it myself? And after recording that podcast with Val and the other creators, there was so much that I wanted to say that I couldn't get out because it's an online discussion. And so like you have your 30 seconds, you have your 30 seconds, you have your 30 seconds, kind of like what you have with panel TV shows. You have no real ability to communicate in depth because there's just a lack of fluidity, and with more people, there's less time for you to say what you want to say. So I think recording more stuff like this with no breaks, there's not going to be any editing with this, and I'm surprised that I've been able to flow so well. Maybe I'm speaking too fast. My dad will say I'm speaking too fast, hi dad, where my young friends will say I'm speaking too slow and I should probably speed it up. Which is another thing, side note to appeal to. But I think there's value in being able to communicate yourself effectively, where I'll be trying to record a scripted video and I'll have to start so many times to say a thing effectively, and yet I've been doing this for the past 40 minutes with effectively no stops. There's been the odd slip up, but by and large, as long as you're saying what you want to say, you can say it effectively. Trying to learn how to communicate what you want to communicate, what sort of emotion you want to convey in an effective, improvised way is so valuable. Can you just stand on a stage and give it your all? Can you stand on a stage and evoke the emotion that you intend to evoke? There's so much power in that. So from a personal perspective, I love talking about this stuff because it's so important. It's so valuable. And I hope you learned something from it. And I absolutely want to hear your thoughts on any of the topics discussed. But also from a personal perspective, try and improve my ability to speak on end in a way that conveys what I want to convey, in a way that hopefully the fact that you've made it this far actually want to listen to. And of course, if you want to listen to more, there's always more videos. There's always the Creators Trove magazine, which you can acquire. There's always the newsletter that you can subscribe to that allows you to receive 2 articles per week in your inbox for free. Or short form content. I'm always on Instagram posting stuff, probably a bit too much. LinkedIn. You have to be everywhere nowadays, and that's tough. But that's the aim of the game. That's what a creator is, doing too much in too little time. But we do it nonetheless because we wouldn't want to be doing anything else. So I hope you have a great day. I hope you take these things to heart, find ways to improve the community around you, whatever industry you may be in, and make the most of your life. Live a happy, healthy, fulfilling life and fight back against the system that's actively working against you. All right, I'm signing off now. Me and my magazine. Have a good one. First one, next one out next month in August. Lovely.